Supreme Court sharply questioning President Trump's assertion of unchecked power and his unprecedented push to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. Justices today hearing arguments in that showdown, a majority of them appearing likely to deny the president's request to immediately remove Cook.
What are we doing here? Once these tools are unleashed, they are used by both sides, and usually more the second time around.
Also inside the courtroom today was Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. And ABC News legal contributor and Hofstra law professor James Sample is back with us to talk about this. And listen, James, are you surprised by the skepticism expressed today by the justices, especially members of that conservative majority?
Alex, it's great to be with you. And I think there is some surprise. A lot of people think of the current Supreme Court as a 6-3 conservative majority. Some people think it's a 3-3-3 court with 3 members who are sort of right of center, but in the middle a little bit. One issue that can get all 9 justices, I don't know that all 9 justices will agree in this particular context, but one way to get all 9 justices to reach at least some modicum of consensus is to argue that a matter is beyond the scope of judicial review and that the courts have no role to play. Justices, really government officials of any government entity, don't like to be part of an impotent entity. And the Trump administration basically pressed a position before the Supreme Court today that the president's decision to fire a Federal Reserve Board of Governor individual is more or less beyond the scope of judicial review. And that, I think, caused even some of the conservative justices, Alex, to raise their eyebrows a little bit more than might have been expected. So to that extent, yes, a little bit of a surprise. But I think the real question that is now before the court is not so much whether or not Lisa Cook's firing will be upheld. I don't think it will. I think Lisa Cook will keep her job. The question really becomes, will the decision be a broad one or a narrow one? And on that matter, there was certainly no consensus.
Yeah, very interesting. But it is that, how dare you tell us that it's none of our business kind of going on in some of the questioning there. So another sticking point in this case that many people, including you, are watching for is how justices will interpret the, quote, for cause. I mean, why is this significant?
And it's a really important question, Alex. And the answer to why it's important is that in 1913, Congress set up the Federal Reserve, and it said that the individual board of governor, the commissioners, if you will, who make up this board, would serve staggered 14-year terms. And the idea is that a president would have a role to play in appointing governors, but that no president would be able to appoint all of the governors because of those staggered terms. And so they also put in a protection that a governor can only be fired for cause. That's the language in the statute. But in the 112 years that the Federal Reserve has existed, no federal board of governor has ever been fired for cause. So we don't have precedent that defines what exactly for cause means. In some other statutes, in other agencies, it means things like inefficiency, neglect, or malfeasance, often abbreviated in the government terminology lexicon as INF. But in this particular statute, all it says is for cause. And without precedent, one of the key questions in this case is whether or not the president's decision, basically without any review by anyone else, is sufficient, particularly whereas here the allegations are essentially untested by any court of law or even a hearing.
Well, and James, big picture here, what's at stake for the Fed? What's at stake for other independent agencies?
What's at stake for the Fed is nothing less than the independence of the entity itself. And for the nation and even the world that depends on the stability of the American monetary market, the idea is that the part of the Federal Reserve's independence is to insulate the Federal Reserve setting interest rates from short-term political pressure. The idea is that the long-term economic health of the country takes priority over the short-term political wants of any president, whether that's Donald Trump or someone else.
All right, James Sample for us. Thank you so much. And coming up after the break,